All right. So 48 Laws of Power. I've done a podcast about it before. One of my favorite books ever. My first thing is I know it's big in the rap community. Why do you think it is so big in the hip hop community?
Well, it came out in 1998, and it sort of fit into the zeitgeist at the time, in hip hop at least, where a lot of Black musicians and their managers were trying to get away from the traditional relationship among Black musicians, where they traditionally did a lot of the creative work, but they never got a fair share of the money.
Mm,
They were just incredibly exploited. And so a lot of them were looking to own their own music and to start their own businesses and to not, to get out of that kind of unfair relationship. So the 48 Laws of Power came out at a time where they were very curious about the power game because of all the industries in the world. I mean, we could rate shark industries by their sharkiness. So Hollywood would rate very high up on the
mhm.
shark scale, and politics would rate somewhere
Oh
pretty
yeah.
high as well, and sports. The music industry is like up here. It's the
Wow.
sharkiest, most Machiavellian environment you can find. And I later did a book with 50 Cent, and he
Right.
explained to me that he'd obviously seen and suffered everything on the streets of Southside Queens where he grew up. He was a crack dealer and he
Hmm.
saw all kinds of violence. He was shot. He said nothing prepared him for the power games in the music industry. So for him, the book was like a template that he could use that could help him navigate that kind of environment. And it was a book that was very honest and straightforward. I compare it to getting your shot of whiskey straight up. There's no water, there's no dilution. It's a straight, heavy
Oh yeah.
shot, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I think hip hop artists appreciate that. And I've since become friends. I'm not name dropping, but with other rappers like Drake, and they've all explained the same thing. This business I'm in, it's just so intense. It's so manipulative, and they my books would help them a lot. So I think it came out at the right time, but it's also I think it appeals to any kind of entrepreneur that
Yes.
wants to basically own their own business and not be dependent on other people. And nobody in the past was more dependent than Black artists and musicians.
I love that. And not only is the advice good, but also the style, like you said, a straight shot. That's very similar to rap,
Yeah,
where they just kind of say
yeah,
this and that, like
yeah,
hardcore. Are you
yeah.
familiar with Kanye West?
Sure.
He's one of my favorite people. I'm fascinated by him. And all right, so I have 7 laws here that I think he from the 48 Laws of Power that I think he perfectly kind of exemplifies. So he has number 6, court attention at all costs. 28,
Obviously.
enter actions with boldness. 25, which is recreate yourself. He had like the old Kanye, the new Kanye, the religious thing that he's doing now. Um, raise your value through absence and scarcity, which is one of my favorite laws because he'll go on Twitter for like 8 months and then he'll be off for 8 months. And
Yeah,
then
yeah, that's great.
I know, and then keep others in suspended terror. The Art of Unpredictability, one of my other favorite ones. He says he's putting his album out, then he doesn't put it out, which is also kind of a principle from the Art of Seduction. Constantly kind of surprise people. That's who seduces people.
Yeah.
Be royal in your own fashion. He calls himself Jesus. Never appeared too perfect. He's kind of had the TMZ moments where he's talked about his pills and his divorces. Even create compelling spectacles. He was just at the Superdome in this little room, hiding and like had a countdown clock on the wall. He's crazy. And I want to see if
Yes.
you had an opinion on him and if you think he's like read your work before.
Well, I know he's read my work. I've met him once at the VMA Awards when I was there with 50 back, like '07. And he was very nice, very charming. Um, and I know he's read the books because he's quoted them in some of his songs. So yeah, he's a very interesting figure. I think, as you point out, I mean, the laws you picked were very good. He's very good at creating compelling spectacles. That would be sort of what ties it all together. He knows the art of drawing attention and then keeping it there, and always having something new on hand that surprises you, that's unexpected. And a lot of people nowadays in social media, for example, in particular, have lost that sense of that art. They're too present. They're too in
Mm,
your face. They don't know how to withdraw, because to get people's attention, you also have to know how to like withdraw yourself, how to be absent sometimes.
mm,
So they think about you, so they fantasize about you. And the one thing about Kanye is people are always talking about him. They're always wondering, what's he up to? What's his latest move? What's behind it? What's really motivating him? Because he never quite reveals what is going on
no.
behind the curtain, what is really the driving force behind his music, the album, his next move in politics or whatever. So that's an art that he has that I think a lot of people could learn from. And it's very interesting that you pointed out those laws. I think you're
Yeah.
right.
He did one political rally in his run for president. And it was actually, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where I live.
Oh,
And I went to it. I was one of like 800 people. No, it was like
uh,
200 people that were
uh,
there for the event. And it was so funny to watch like how the media covered it versus how it actually was. I will say it was very weird, but everyone in the room had their eyes up there like, oh my God, he's a fascinating character. And
what did he talk about? What was he like?
so he came out and he had a bulletproof vest on, which was kind of odd. Like it was during quarantine time. It was kind of just coming out of it. It was a small crowd. And first thing he said was, if I'm not on the board of Adidas by tomorrow, then I'm not gonna put out another shoe with them. Now, none of the media picked that up. He was like making a demand, and I don't think he's still on the board, but I think that's what he wanted the headline to be. That one didn't get picked up. Then he had a couple of people come on stage and like ask questions about like gay rights and abortion, some stuff like that. He kind of rambled on about it. But then he had this moment where he started crying, bawling his eyes out
Oh,
because he was thinking about the thought of possibly he had his first daughter, North, with Kim Kardashian, and they considered possibly getting an abortion. They didn't do it. They considered it. And just the thought of it made him start crying and crying. And it was really touching because he's very much pro like life, I guess. And that was the story that came out in the news. And that was the first time he ever addressed it. It was very embarrassing, I guess, for Kim. But he was raw. He was raw when he was there.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's definitely one of his primary qualities. I've noticed it as well, and that can be very powerful in a way. I mean, and I talk about that in my last book, The Laws of Human Nature and in
mhm,
The Art of Seduction, because it gives somebody a real aura of authenticity. He doesn't seem to be someone who's playing a role. He's really is who he is. And I think people like musicians and rock stars and artists are given license to kind of play out their fuller selves and including their dark side in the public realm, as long as they appear very authentic, that it's not like a game that they're playing. So,
right.
and I got that impression when I met him, that there was something kind of raw and on the edge about him, that there was very an intensity that a lot of people don't have, and I found that very interesting. Yeah,
Yes, yes. And that's the keeping people cultivating air of unpredictability. Like I think
that's right.
naturally just does that. He's a wild dude.